Sakurai is an awkward loner like you, who has no hose and just might die a virgin. However, everything changes when his annoying childhood friend transfers to his school with her massive milk cannons and rizzes him up so he can crack her. The story begins on the first day of Sakurai's sophomore year, with him walking to class alone, when a midget with massive chest pillows suddenly approaches and greets him. Seeing her, Sakurai recognizes her as his former junior from the swimming club, Uzaki, and gasps in shock. As they continue walking, Uzaki asks Sakurai if he'll be taking up swimming again in college, but he says no, because there are other fun things to do. As the year passes by, Uzaki closely observes Sakurai and quickly learns that he's a pathetic loner.
Only language you speak is failure! Bruh.
Who does cringy things all day. At this, she feels sorry for him and decides to be his friend, whether he likes it or not, so he won't die a hopeless virgin like you.
Nani?
One day, while Sakurai strolls through the hallway, Uzaki suddenly shows up running and crashes into him. Pissed, he screams at her for being clumsy, but Uzaki ignores it and asks him out to lunch, which he immediately refuses. As he keeps walking, Uzaki follows him, incessantly asking where he's taking them both. However, when Sakurai continues ignoring her, the annoying little cockroach loses it and accuses Sakurai of being a two-timing Casanova right in front of everyone to guilt-trip him into letting her tag along. Shocked, Sakurai screams back, telling her to stop spouting nonsense. But when he sees everyone staring at him, like they just saw Diddy's disciple in the wild,
That's the wrong number!
He folds immediately. Moments later, when the duo arrives at the mall, Uzaki finds out that Sakurai originally planned to watch a movie alone, so she bursts out laughing and makes fun of him for being such a hopeless loner. Pissed, Sakurai tries to defend himself, claiming that not everyone enjoys cosplaying Barbie or acting like the creepy stalker she is. However, Uzaki refuses to listen and continues trolling him, so he pinches her nose to make her shut up. Afterward, he checks the movies showing that day, takes one long look at Uzaki's mommy milkers, and decides to pay for her movie ticket so he can keep watching those jugs bounce.
Shut up and take my money!
Uzaki is immediately stoked, so she picks a movie. While paying for their tickets with his cinema points, Sakurai gradually starts to accept Uzaki's character. However, the moment he's done paying, she trash talks him for being so broke that he had to pay using points.
It's an evil world we live in.
Causing him to scold her. After watching the movie, Uzaki decides to visit an electronics store to buy new earbuds, and Sakurai tags along. There, Sakurai checks some electronics down the aisle when Uzaki, who's sitting on a massage chair, suddenly calls him to sit on the one next to hers. After Sakurai does so, Uzaki complains that her shoulders hurt from carrying all that chest weight, so Sakurai cranks the massage settings up to max for maximum effect. Almost immediately, Uzaki lets out a soft sound that shocks Sakurai and starts singing happy noises as her melons defy the laws of jiggle physics. Sakurai immediately freezes as Uzaki's battle cry activates the testosterone in his sausage, but before he busts one down there, he stops the exercise in a panic and leaves. On the way out, the annoying twerp stands on a vibrating machine, beginning round 2 of the milker bounce and causing Sakurai to cringe from embarrassment. Once that's over, the duo visits the virtual reality section, where Uzaki flails around while playing a zombie game and accidentally slams the controller into Sakurai's face. Pissed, Sakurai punishes her by grabbing her face, then decides to play a hyper-realistic Hungry Shark knockoff. Before long, a shark attacks him in the game, causing him to panic and flail around until he accidentally grabs Uzaki's right fun bag
Bombastic side-eye
and squeezes it like a stress ball. After doing this for a few more seconds, he takes off the goggles, convinced what he just felt was part of the game, and starts praising the devs without even noticing Uzaki nearby. Later that evening, they visit a batting cage, where Sakurai fumbles so badly that Uzaki nearly choked from laughing at him. After he's done embarrassing himself, Uzaki decides to try. However, when the ball comes, Uzaki whips out a full swing and cracks her tiny backbone, leaving Sakurai in shock. After she goes down in pain, Sakurai has her lie down so he can help her stretch. However, when Sakurai starts blaming him for making her play, he crashes out and just tells her to see a doctor on her own. Later, the duo visits a ramen restaurant for dinner. However, while Sakurai scolds Uzaki for being out of shape and putting herself at risk, Uzaki eats all his courage. Upon finding out, he loses his mind and crashes out at her, causing the restaurant owner to chuckle a bit and urge Sakurai to treat his girlfriend a little better. Irritated, Sakurai says he would rather kiss a snake than date the midget, then orders more courage. After getting his order, Uzaki tries to eat it again, but he coldly tells her off. The next day, Uzaki approaches Sakurai on their way to school, trolls him a little, and yaps about how she enjoyed playing at the batting cage with him. She then asks Sakurai to teach her how to play baseball next time, but while Sakurai imagines actually having fun with her, she suddenly blurts out, right in front of everyone, that her back hurts from the heavy breathing exercise they did last night, leaving Sakurai totally shocked. Several days later, while Sakurai is at work, Uzaki spots him inside the shop while she's on a stroll and rushes inside. Seeing her, Sakurai screams, alerting the shop owner, Akihiko, but Uzaki continues yapping anyway, asking if she can grab a bite now that she's there. Pissed, Sakurai immediately tells her to go home, claiming that the coffee shop is the only haven safe enough for him to relax and that he wouldn't want her to disturb that. However, while Uzaki argues that he lets her order something to eat, she spots the owner ducking under the counter, introduces herself, and thanks him for taking care of Sakurai. In response, Akihiko mistakes Uzaki for a little girl, which gets her so pissed that Sakurai laughs at her before correcting his boss that she's a college student. Upon realizing that he was wrong, Akihiko recoils in shock, because he's never made such a vile mistake before. However, when he spots Uzaki's double Ds, he realizes she's an actual adult and decides to let her order. Moments later, Sakurai serves Uzaki some ice water and rudely tells her to order something. Before doing so, Uzaki calls out his attitude, demanding that he treat her like a customer, but Sakurai tells her to order something quickly or get out of his shop. Hearing this, Uzaki starts giving Sakurai a pep talk about taking his job seriously, no matter the customer, but Sakurai says he can't risk doing that because she'll laugh at him. When Uzaki promises not to do that, Ro bends down and tells her some corny nonsense that makes her feel butterflies in her tummy, only to end it abruptly. At this point, Akihiko, who's been quietly enjoying the drama, urges Sakurai to show some good customer service so he can keep watching them, and Sakurai agrees. Unfortunately for him, the moment he starts pretending to care, Uzaki bursts out laughing at him, causing him to throw her out of the shop, literally. From outside, Uzaki apologizes and begs to be let back in, but Akihiko turns away from Sakurai to hide his laughter and lets him go for the day. On the way home, Uzaki asks Sakurai to let her order something at the cafe next time, but Sakurai tells her to stop by when he's not on shift. At this, she promises not to laugh next time, and starts yapping about the cafe, calling it a nice and quiet place. Sakurai indulges in her comments about the cafe, but the moment she talks about getting a part-time job there, he forbids her from ever doing it. The following day, while on his way to school, Sakurai spots a stray orange cat in his path. Not long after, Uzaki walks the same path, spots Sakurai desperately trying to pet the cat, and is grossed out by how creepy the whole thing looks. She walks closer and asks Sakurai what he's doing. In response, he tells her he's trying to pet the cat, but it keeps clawing away at him. Hearing this, Uzaki tells him he's been petting it incorrectly and shows him how to do it properly. When the cat warms up to Uzaki, Sakurai is both shocked and impressed that she knows so much about cats, and she tells him it's because they have 2 cats at her house. She then asks if he would like to visit and pet them sometime, but Sakurai isn't so sure because he fears it might get awkward. Just then, a random bike rider zooms past them, scaring the cat and causing it to run away. Uzaki seems totally fine with it, convinced they'll see it again. However, as they continue walking, Sakurai becomes so disappointed and gloomy that she decides to run back and get it for him. As Sakurai chases after her, Uzaki spots the cat's tail sticking out of a hanging shrub bush and nonchalantly jumps in to catch it, only for the cat to escape and for her to get stuck inside instead. When Sakurai catches up to her, he finds her legs sticking out of the bush. Embarrassed, he spanks her yams with a book, causing her skirt to close up properly, and embarrassingly explains everything to Uzaki, who's screaming in pain. Despite being embarrassed, Uzaki asks Sakurai to grab her waist and pull her out. As he does so, desperately struggling to keep his third leg in check, Uzaki tells him to stop pulling her and get her shirt untangled first, so she doesn't end up flashing her melons too. While Sakurai carefully untangles her shirt, 2 girls walk by and spot Sakurai doing the to and fro motion with Uzaki's lower body, causing them to think he's molesting her and run for dear life. After finally getting the annoying girl out, Sakurai covers his face in shame, but continues walking nonetheless. A few hours later, at lunch, Uzaki spots Sakurai in the school's cafeteria, looking away from her, and asks if he's that embarrassed to be eating alone again, only for Sakurai to tell her that he's actually eating with a friend this time. Shocked, Uzaki starts tweaking like your glitchy potato PC, asking if she can meet his friend, but Sakurai ignores her, picks up his food, and walks to his seat. Moments later, while eating, Sakurai spots Uzaki doing weird movements like a demon about to be exorcised and wonders if she's really okay upstairs. Just then, he receives a text from Uzaki, asking if he's okay, but he texts her back, telling her to quit worrying about him, put her phone away, and eat properly. Seeing this, Uzaki trolls him for acting like an old man, which gets Sakurai super pissed and causes him to shun her with the next few texts. Later that evening, while Sakurai finishes work to enjoy his peace, Uzaki waltzes in, causing Sakurai to scream again. He immediately tells her to get out, but Uzaki latches her huge chest to him, giving him the annoying "I'm just a girl" look, and begs him to help her with her essay assignment. Confused, Confused, Sakurai picks up the report book and refuses to help her, claiming that he's still working. However, Akihiko convinces him to help her out since they don't have any customers, so he can watch them crash out at each other again. Moments later, as Sakurai supervises Uzaki, Akihiko serves them some sandwiches and coffee on the house, but Sakurai tells Uzaki she can't eat until she finishes her essay and continues correcting her poor choice of words. While Uzaki applies the corrections, she suddenly asks Sakurai if he'll allow her to swing by his place afterward, but Sakurai tells her no because he doesn't want her to append his lifestyle for her entertainment. When Uzaki promises not to do that, Sakurai gets very flustered and asks her why he should let her into his place. Uzaki tells him she can help him cook, but Sakurai immediately assumes she's lying and crashes out when he finally realizes that she wanted to stay the night at his place. Confused, Ozaki asks why he's pissed, but as Sakurai struggles to tell her it's because he might be tempted to crack her, she suddenly blurts out that they can play video games all night, causing Sakurai to go red in embarrassment and freak out, much to Akihiko's amusement. The next day at work, Akihiko's daughter, Ame, ogles Sakurai's toned body while he works, and nearly loses her mind as she imagines all the dirty things she'd like to do with him. Just then, Akihiko catches her lazing around and scolds her. While doing so, Uzaki arrives and greets Akihiko very warmly, leaving Ame shocked and confused. She immediately approaches Sakurai and asks who the feisty midget is. When Sakurai tells her that Uzaki's a sophomore at their college, Ame stares at Uzaki in surprise, especially when she and Sakurai start chatting about a game like good friends, and asks her father to explain their relationship. Akihiko ignores the question and urges her to get Uzaki some water. While doing so, Ame and Uzaki introduce themselves to each other, but after seeing how cute Uzaki is and how humongous she is in the sack, Ame gets a little jealous. Thankfully, she calms down before embarrassing herself and asks Uzaki about her history with Sakurai. While Uzaki responds, Sakurai, who's nearby, notices that Uzaki's water is running low and decides to help her refill. After hearing everything Uzaki has to say, Ame returns to the counter and tells her father that she's also getting really interested in watching Sakurai and Uzaki's drama, so Akihiko invites her behind the counter to watch what happens next. Just then, as Sakurai walks toward Uzaki's table to refill her glass, Uzaki gets up and bumps into him, causing both of them to fall as icy cold water splashes all over them. With Uzaki on top of him, she crashes out at Sakurai for bumping into her, but Sakurai tells her she was supposed to wait for him. The next day, Uzaki finds out from Akihiko that Sakurai is not at work because he's out with a cold, so she makes rude comments about him being fragile, despite being a gym bro, and asks Akihiko for Sakurai's address. Moments later, while Sakurai slowly groans in pain from his bed, someone rings the doorbell like a maniac, and he answers it, only to find Ozaki at his entrance, asking if he really has a cold. Before he can respond, he suddenly collapses on her, forcing Uzaki to catch him. An hour later, Sakurai wakes up, wondering who told her his address, while Ozaki, who feels sorry for him, asks if he's eaten anything yet. When Sakurai says no, she gets up and checks his fridge and rice cooker, only to find out that the idiot is out of food. With this, she visits the pharmacy to get some medication, then stops by the convenience store to get some ingredients before returning home. Moments later, after cooking him a meal, Ozaki has Sakurai sit up and serves him a warm meal to wake his body up. When Sakurai takes a bite, he nonchalantly tells Uzaki that he can't tell how it tastes because he can't taste anything at that moment, leaving Uzaki a little disappointed. Before long, Sakurai finishes his food, and Uzaki tells him to strip down so he can wipe all that gunky sweat off his body. Sakurai immediately refuses to do this, but Uzaki yanks off his t-shirt, revealing his chiseled, muscular body, and aggressively wipes him down, all while giving him an impromptu back massage with her natural stress balls. After that, Sakurai lies back down, and Uzaki gives him his medicine before he falls asleep. Once that's done, he tells her to head back home before it gets too late, but Uzaki promises to leave once he's asleep and decides to play some games in the meantime. Touched, Sakurai thanks her for going out of her way to take care of him, and Uzaki happily tells him he's welcome. The next morning, while Sakurai strolls to school, Emi approaches him and asks about his cold. Sakurai assures her he's doing fine now and offers to do something nice for her to thank her for covering for him, but to his surprise, Ami tells him to invite Uzaki to their shop later. By noon, Akihiko and his daughter host a small Korean barbecue feast in their shop to celebrate Sakurai's recovery. After making a toast, Uzaki picks up a whole plate of meat and begins grilling everything on there, causing Sakurai to crash out and entertain Akihiko and his daughter even more. Just then, the duo gulps their beer down, and Ozaki asks them if beer and liquor are really that good. After Akihiko and Ami assure her that it's good, Ozaki continues pestering and annoying Sakurai until she eventually excuses herself to the ladies' room. While she's gone, Akihiko expresses how happy he is that Ozaki took care of Sakurai, then serves Sakurai some premium meat and urges him to tell them how his night with Ozaki went. Sakurai immediately insists that nothing happened, but as he starts preaching his love for loneliness again, Akihiko and Ame accuse him of being gloomy. At this, Sakurai adds that he's worried Ozaki might get into trouble if word gets out that she's been visiting his place so often. However, to Akihiko and Ami, that only proves he's slowly starting to care about the annoying little twerp. Seconds later, Ozaki returns and asks what they were chatting about, but they all pretend to be talking about work, leaving Ozaki completely out of the loop. Eventually, Ozaki notices Sakurai calling Ame by her first name and calls him out on it. However, when Sakurai says it's because he had no choice, she gets sad and keeps eating in silence. The following day, during recess, Sakurai waits in an empty classroom for Ozaki. When she arrives, she dangles a hypnosis coin in front of his eyes and tries to hypnotize him. Sakurai is shocked that she's daft enough to think it will actually work, but to thank her for taking care of him earlier, he plays along and makes her happy. Convinced he's now under her spell, Ozaki tells him to call her by her first name, which catches Sakurai off guard, but for some reason, he finds it hard to say. When he finally does, she squeals like a goofy girl in love and keeps making him say it until she's satisfied. Afterward, she starts ordering him to buy her various foods and cool stuff from the store, but Sakurai smacks her head in anger and crashes out at her for trying to scam him. In her defense, Ozaki tells him it's because he doesn't call her by her first name, like he does Ami. So Sakurai goes on half knees and activates her dopamine receptors by apologizing gently. He then explains that he doesn't like calling girls by their first names, and that Ame is the only exception because she's his co-worker, and Ozaki surprisingly decides to let him off the hook. Soon after, Sakurai dangles the hypnosis coins before Ozaki to prove to her that it doesn't work. However, when Ozaki actually falls under his hypnosis, he crashes out and searches the hypnosis book she brought with her earlier on how to fix her. A few weeks later, Akihiko and Ame tell Sakurai that they'll be taking a family trip the following week to celebrate Golden Week and advise him to hang out with his buddies while they're away. However, once the holiday begins, Sakurai spends the first 3 days playing Dark Souls non-stop until the annoying Ozaki visits him. After Sakurai lets her in, Ozaki immediately concludes that he'll be free to chill out with her, since a loner's greatest fear is touching grass, and suggests that they play a spawning game called Doraemon. At first, Sakurai refuses, but after taking out his phone and giving it a second thought, he ultimately decides to join her. Moments later, as they take a stroll, Ozaki spawns a cat in the Doraemon game and scurries over to show it to Sakurai. Seeing this, Sakurai squints, startling Ozaki, who immediately asks why he's making that face. When he tells her his eyes hurt from overgaming, Ozaki trolls him a little and decides to buy him a pair of computer glasses. Not long after, the duo arrives at a glasses store, where they spot Ame shopping, and Ozaki explains Sakurai's pathetic situation to her. Afterward, she asks Ame to help them find a pair of computer glasses for him to wear. However, when Sakurai puts one on, the girls melt under his gaze. Ozaki and Ame make poor Sakurai wear a few awkward glasses to make him look goofy. Then they troll him and laugh their butts off as the idiot willingly participates in their humiliation ritual. After getting a good laugh in, Ame helps Ozaki pick a nice, pink pair of glasses, has her put them on, and asks Sakurai if he thinks the midget looks hot in them. At first glance, Sakurai finds her incredibly hot in glasses, but to avoid looking like a simp, he tells her the glasses make her look dumber, immediately sparking yet another argument between them. Moments later, as they ride the bullet train to their next outing, Ozaki trash-talks Sakurai for pissing her off and getting them kicked out of the glasses store while playing Doraemon, but Sakurai says she started it. As the duo continues playing the game and bantering, the train suddenly shakes, causing Sakurai to hold Ozaki from the front to stop her from falling. Following a brief, awkward silence, several more people, including a buff guy, board the cabin they're in, forcing Sakurai and Ozaki to get so close that Ozaki's soft chest pillows rest against Sakurai's chiseled abs. Almost instantly, Sakurai feels the fluffiness and fears his Coctopus Prime might act on its own again, even though Ozaki also doesn't feel too comfortable herself. To avoid accidentally dropping goon juice all over his pants, Sakurai scans the posters around their cabin for anything neutral to calm down, only to find off-brand Bonnie Blue modeling in a random sports bra ad. Seeing this, he immediately closes his eyes, gnaws his teeth, and zones out, while Uzaki's face also turns bright red, until all he can picture are blue skies, rainbows, and lush green grass. Just then, Uzaki's steamy pheromones hit his nasal cavity, immediately causing Sakurai to snap and lose any cognitive responsiveness. When they finally arrive at their stop, Ozaki steps out of the train, only to find Sakurai still inside, staring back at her like a Chucky doll. Scared, she immediately tries to call him back to his senses, but unfortunately, the train continues its commute, taking Sakurai along with it. Hours later, when he comes to his senses, Sakurai finds himself in the middle of nowhere and realizes that he's got tons of missed calls from Uzaki. The next week, once the holidays are over, Sakurai tells Akihiko at work exactly what happened, and Akihiko asks him what happened while trying not to laugh. After Sakurai explains everything, Akihiko tries to give him some advice as a millennial unk, but fails woefully. When Ami finds out what happened, she tells him, while fighting her laughter, to follow up with Uzaki since she's the one who invited him, and Sakurai agrees. The next day, while walking down the stairs, Sakurai spots Uzaki pretending to sleep on a random desk and tries to ignore her. However, when Uzaki calls him over, he sits near her and asks why she's being gloomy. Uzaki tells him it's because there are no holidays in June, which immediately ticks Sakurai off. However, to avoid another fight, he engages in her dumb discussion for a minute and suggests they hang out next weekend. Hearing this, Uzaki freaks out, as she never thought a loner like Sakurai would ever make the first move, but as Sakurai's about to take back his offer, she immediately agrees to go. On day, it rains really heavily, causing Sakurai to consider canceling the outing. Just then, his doorbell rings, and he opens it, only to find Uzaki completely drenched head to toe in rainwater. She explains that since she figured it would rain, she bought some ingredients at the store so she could come over and play games with him all day. Now that she's drenched, she asks him if she can borrow his shower and a change of clothes, and Sakurai lets her have it. Once she's freshened up, Uzaki hits the kitchen to cook lunch. Seeing her, Sakurai asks if he can help, and she lets him wash the veggies for her. While he does so, she continues yapping some goated stuff about her cooking, and Sakurai listens. Moments later, the duo sits in front of the television to play a pirated Neko Minecraft game together. Over the next few hours, the duo has fun playing their game and eating Uzaki's lunch. By nightfall, while Sakurai sees Uzaki off to the train station, he tells her to come next time, and Uzaki agrees. When they get to the train station, Uzaki bombards Sakurai with a boatload of advice on how to store the curry she made for him. After that, she nervously asks her senpai if he'll allow her to come over tomorrow to hang out again, and Sakurai happily agrees to let her. Some months later, when summer arrives, Uzaki joins Sakurai one morning as he walks to school and asks if she can come over to his place after classes. Confused, Sakurai reminds her that she's been doing that a lot lately, but Uzaki tells him she doesn't trust his attention span to keep their building in Mio-craft standing, pissing Sakurai off. Moments later, Sakurai finds himself on a suspended wooden plank, hanging atop a skyscraper and trying to save a trapped cat, only to end up falling just as he's about to grab it. At that instant, the anxiety from falling jolts his brain, and he wakes up in class, sweating profusely and hoping nobody saw what just happened. Just then, he spots Uzaki staring at him and desperately trying not to laugh. To keep her from disrupting the whole class, he sits near her and passively-aggressively tells her to shut her trap when she starts making fun of him. As if that wasn't enough, the corny professor starts her lecture on the interpretation of dreams, and even goes as far as interpreting what it means when one wakes up from falling in their sleep. Things immediately get worse for Sakurai as Uzaki has a field day rage-baiting and trolling him. After classes, the annoying twerp continues trolling Sakurai, even in the hallway, but he does his best to ignore her. Before long, they reach a flight of stairs. As they make their way down, Uzaki gets so caught up in yapping and trolling that she trips. Luckily for her, Sakurai catches her before she hits the ground. However, before letting her go, he scares her by claiming that people who almost fall down the stairs develop a weird condition, finally giving him one up on the little jerk. Soon after, as Sakurai walks down the stairs, he sees his handsome blonde friend, Sakaki, being asked out by two girls. However, Sakaki tells them he's hanging out with Sakurai instead, immediately making them cringe. Afterward, he grabs Sakurai's arm and awkwardly walks away with him. When Sakurai asks why he's running away, Sakaki says it's because those girls are far too classless for him to hang out with, and Sakurai agrees. Moments later, while Sakaki gets them vending machine drinks, Sakurai asks why he's been absent for the past month, and Sakaki says he went to Okinawa to enjoy the gorgeous ocean. After that, Sakaki asks Sakurai if anything happened to him while he was gone. Hearing this, Sakurai recalls all the crazy things Uzaki made him do, but as he tries telling Sakaki about her, his brain hits a blue screen, so he ends up telling Sakaki the boring parts of his life. Pissed, Sakaki crashes out at him and accuses him of living a pathetic and hopeless life. When Sakurai tries to ignore him, he grabs Sakurai's shirt and starts shouting at him. Just then, Uzaki shows up looking for Sakurai. But when she spots Sakaki holding him, she asks him if Sakaki's his friend. Once Sakurai says yes, she goes white in shock and starts asking several stupid questions to confirm if Sakaki's truly his friend. After Sakurai confirms yet again, she smiles like a lost puppy, pissing Sakurai off. But Sakaki cuts their conversation short and introduces himself to Uzaki, causing her to do the same. After that, Uzaki turns back to Sakurai and asks where he plans to take her after classes. While Sakurai falls into her rage bait trap, Sakaki watches them and senses chemistry between them. Suddenly, the bell rings, causing Uzaki to run back to class, and Sakaki immediately starts teasing Sakurai about his unusual friendliness with Uzaki, causing poor Sakurai to crash out again. During recess, Sakaki approaches Sakurai and Uzaki while they game aggressively on their Nintendo Game Boys and asks if they've already cracked each other. Shocked, Sakurai tells Sakaki that they've not and will never do it, but for some reason, Uzaki brings up crazy memories they've shared and then accuses Sakurai of essaying her when things get awkward. Eventually, she tells Sakaki that Sakurai is as limp as a monk whenever she's around him, and Sakaki apologizes for being too forward. Moving on, the duo double trolls Sakurai's loner lifestyle even more, but the moment Sakaki starts asking weird questions about them dating, Sakurai and Uzaki walk away to get ice cream. Shortly after, Ame shows up pissed, introduces herself, and accuses Sakaki of being way too blunt earlier when he was teasing Sakurai and Uzaki. When Sakaki tries to defend himself, she tells him she's avidly watching Sakurai and Uzaki's love story bloom from afar, and isn't about to let some blonde airhead ruin everything. Hearing this, Sakaki realizes that Ame also wants them to date, then tries to partner with her, but she coldly rejects him and screams at him, not knowing that Sakurai is outside, hearing everything. Moments later, while chilling on a bench outside, Uzaki tries to feed her senpai some of the choco mint ice cream he bought for her, but he refuses, claiming it tastes like toothpaste. Hearing this, Uzaki's eyes open wide, and she dares Sakurai to say that again. When Sakurai repeats the same thing, she completely snaps and accuses him of mocking the almighty choco mint ice cream. Sakurai then tries to defend himself, but she overwhelms him with her screaming, and goes on an insanely long rant, explaining the history of Chocomint, how it gained so many fans, whom she calls Chocomintans, while also almost starting World War III over Chocomint ice cream. After that, she puts on an Oscar-worthy performance before the intrigued randoms, crowding the spot to thank Chocomint-flavored ice cream for being so mild on her taste buds, and surprisingly earns a standing ovation, leaving Sakurai immensely shocked by the lack of brain cells in the scene. Once that's all over, Uzaki sits back down and tells Sakurai never to diss what someone else likes again. Confused, Sakurai reminds her that she once dissed his solo movies, but Uzaki ignores that and continues yapping. To avoid another emotional breakdown, Sakurai explains that he developed a fear of anything with a cooling sensation from an early age because he couldn't handle mint back then, which is why he never tried Chocomint ice cream. At this, Uzaki loses it and tries to punch him for mocking Chocomint without tasting it, but Sakurai holds her off. Once she's calm, she settles back down and convinces him to take one bite, claiming it won't ever hurt him. As Sakurai is about to eat it, he suddenly remembers that Uzaki's eaten off the toothpick before, but he eats it anyway to avoid trouble. After feeding him, Uzaki eats the final piece, only to realize at the last minute that she just shared an indirect kiss with Sakurai. Some weeks later, Akihiko hires Uzaki to work at the cafe with them to bring her closer to Sakurai. On her first day, Sakurai angrily asks if she's trying to make him quit his job, but Uzaki says she's only there because she's dead broke, like y'all watching, and wants to have some fun too. To force Sakurai to accept her, Akihiko and Ame guilt-trip him into thinking he'd be wrong to reject Uzaki just because he doesn't like her. Once it works, Akihiko tells Sakurai to show Uzaki how everything works, and he gets right to it. He makes Emi roleplay as a customer and shows Uzaki how to politely serve a first-time customer while they check the menu to order. However, halfway through her lesson, Uzaki suddenly asks Sakurai where the joke is at, immediately causing him to crash out and scold her for not taking this seriously. After Uzaki laughs her butt off, Ame gets up and reveals that they've already taught her how they do things before he arrived, and that they only made him do this so they can rile him up and laugh at him. After lunch rush, Uzaki asks Sakurai if he has plans for summer break, but the stupid dummy says he plans to hole up at home as much as possible and play games all day. Shocked, Uzaki immediately suggests they go to the beach since he hasn't done any swimming since he graduated school, but just as Sakurai is about to agree, Sakaki shows up with a smug look on his face and joins in on the fun. A few weeks later, during summer break, Ami stares at the hot, beautiful ocean, when Uzaki suddenly calls her to join her and Sakurai. Seeing her weapons of mass destruction, Ami is intimidated at first, but eventually walks under their shade and learns that Sakaki is currently taking care of their lodging, meaning she's the one who has to watch over these two lovebirds. She asks Uzaki where Sakurai is, and Uzaki points to a platform several meters offshore, where they spot Sakurai in full swimming gear, diving into the ocean. Moments later, when Sakurai swims back to shore, refreshed and energized, Ame crashes out at him for wearing full swimming gear and tells him to ditch the swim gear, as they're there to have fun. After that, Ame scolds Sakurai again for leaving Uzaki all alone and vulnerable to getting hit on by random guys, and advises him to make it up to Uzaki by complimenting her swimsuit. Sakurai then tries out a few swimsuit compliments on Ame first, but she smacks him on the back in embarrassment, forcing him to walk over to Uzaki and say the same thing to her instead. Seconds later, Ami spots Uzaki pushing Sakurai away before walking toward her. She immediately asks the flustered Uzaki if Sakurai did something to her, but Uzaki dawdles around like a doofus, desperately trying to hide her embarrassment. Before long, Sakaki returns with a baseball bat and a whole watermelon and tells everyone that Sakurai will be playing watermelon piñata blindfolded. Moments later, once Sakurai is ready, Ozaki, Sakaki, and Ami make sinister faces as they discuss their plans to troll Sakurai, causing the idiot himself to crash out. Once it's time to play, Uzaki spams him with an impossible Mortal Kombat key combo, causing Sakurai to freak out while Ami and Sakaki feel sorry for him. To help him out, Ami and Sakaki tell him to move forward slowly, and when he does, Uzaki steps in front of him, confusing him even further. Just then, Sakurai trips over Uzaki, and the two of them fall, causing him to grab her left melon accidentally. Since he's still blindfolded, he squeezes it, thinking he just touched a jellyfish, and asks Ame to tell him where the watermelon is. Ame tells him he's already touching one, so Sakurai keeps squeezing it until Uzaki lets out a silent queef. Soon after, Sakurai lets go of her cushion and removes his blindfold to find the watermelon. Embarrassed, Uzaki puts the watermelon between them, and when Sakurai tries to remember the sensation, she feels even more embarrassed. Later that evening, the four of them arrive at Sakaki's rich parents' summer home and explore the various equipment and amenities there. After that, they check out all the meats and veggies in the fridge and spend most of their night outside, grilling and barbecuing. Just then, Ami asks what they'll do after grilling, and while Uzaki suggests playing a video game, Sakaki suggests they visit the back hills first once it gets dark. A few hours later, Sakaki takes the other three on a stroll through the dark forest, with no other light source but their phone flashlights, and tells them they'll be doing a test of courage. Hearing this, Sakurai immediately chickens out, and when Sakaki asks why, he says it's because he can't handle anything scary at all. While Sakaki immediately apologizes for being pushy, Uzaki, on the other hand, glows red with a rage-baiting aura, scaring the knockers out of Sakurai. Then, she steals his phone, taking away his only source of light, and runs away, causing Sakurai to chase after her. With them gone, Ami asks Sakaki if this is what he planned, but Sakaki says he was expecting Uzaki to be the scared one, not Sakurai. As they slowly track down the idiots, Sakaki tells Ami that he was only trying to create the right conditions to make things interesting, prompting Ami to ask why he takes this so seriously. Sakaki says that although Sakurai is a great person, he's too serious, awkward, and bad at making friends, making him want to help make his college life more fun so it won't feel like a waste. Just then, they find Uzaki desperately begging Sakurai, who's visibly shivering, to forgive her for going too far, and immediately call off the stupid game. Moments later, when they're back home, Uzaki hops on a game and tries to pester Sakurai again, only to realize that he's already asleep. With Sakaki and Ame also asleep, she turns off the game, gets super close to Sakurai, and tries to snap his sleeping face. Just then, Sakurai grabs her 4-foot body, wrapping his arm around her like she's a body pillow, and brings her milk jugs dangerously close to his mouth. Uzaki immediately tries to wake him up, but when she discovers that he's knocked out cold, she feels really bad for going too far with the trolling earlier, and decides to let him have his way with her melons. By morning, While Sakurai is happily brushing his teeth alongside Uzaki, Uzaki tells him to invest in a body pillow, leaving him confused. A few days later, Uzaki receives a weird call from Sakurai begging her, while using his bedroom voice, to be with him. After hanging up, Uzaki nervously walks to their meeting place, fully expecting Sakurai to ask her out. However, when they meet, Sakurai says he wanted her to escort him into a nearby cat cafe because he was nervous going in alone. Disappointed, Uzaki kicks Sakurai on the leg several times before finally escorting him in. Inside, Sakurai goes feral and nearly harasses the attendant, asking if he can pet the cats. Once she permits him, Sakurai gently approaches a gray cat and, while under Uzaki's supervision, finally manages to get the cat to hop on his lap. The poor guy is incredibly stoked as he pets the cat like it's his baby. Seeing him, Uzaki is a little creeped out over his overwhelming affection for cats, but eventually, she plays along and engages him in a bit of trolling. Before long, Sakurai gets too overjoyed and asks Uzaki how he can repay her for helping him this time. Upon recalling that she'll be turning 20 soon, Uzaki nervously asks if Sakurai can make it special for her, but Sakurai says he can't process anything for now because his legs are numb. Pissed, Uzaki grabs the cat off his leg, causing him to go on all fours, and tells him to uncross his legs so he'll fix the numbness. When Sakurai refuses to do that, she gets behind him and pokes his soul several times, causing the idiot to scream so loudly that they get kicked out of the cafe. On the way home, Sakurai blames Uzaki for getting them kicked out, but Uzaki ignores him and continues trolling him about his uncanny affection for cats. Once she's had her fill of rage baiting her senpai, Uzaki says her goodbyes. However, before she leaves, Sakurai reminds her to think deeply about how he can repay her, and Uzaki tells him to get her a good gift for her 20th birthday coming up soon. After she leaves, Sakurai returns to work looking melancholic and asks Akihiko and Ame for gift ideas. Before responding, Akihiko and Ame immediately figure out Uzaki's dirty game, but refuse to tell Sakurai so they can continue enjoying the show. Akihiko then asks Sakurai if he's thought of anything yet. In response, Sakurai imagines giving Uzaki flowers, a ring, and even a new game, and says he feels that anything he gives her will be a bust. Although Akihiko and Ame know that in reality, Uzaki will definitely love anything Sakurai gives her, the toxic duo advise Sakurai to go with his intuition and give her the first thing that comes to mind. One day, while Sakurai strolls around, searching for a present, Uzaki calls and tells him, using her bedroom voice, that she wants him to be with her. Flustered, Sakurai keeps walking until he meets Uzaki and nervously asks why she said that on the phone. In response, Uzaki points to the pub beside them and says she needed someone older to get her in, leaving Sakurai shocked. He then asks why she's making him do this, and Uzaki says she wants him to drain his wallet by treating her to drinks as they celebrate the eve of her 20th birthday at the pub. Hearing this, Sakurai screams in agony, but honors his commitment nonetheless. Inside, he asks Uzaki if she truly wants to spend her 20th birthday at the pub, and Uzaki says she's fine with it, as long as she gets to share a drink with him. After some more small talk, the duo toast to Uzaki's birthday, and Uzaki gets to taste alcohol for the first time in her life. Afterward, Sakurai asks her how it tastes, and she immediately complains about the infamous burning sensation in her throat. Following this, she starts to wonder how beer tastes, so Sakurai decides to order her a beer. Once it arrives, she tastes it as well and tries pairing it with karaj, which she immediately enjoys. Sakurai then tells her to order whatever she wants, so Uzaki orders every item on the iPad menu, until the waiter comes over and tells them to quiet down. Once their order arrives, Sakurai accidentally eats something spicy and desperately begs Uzaki to order him some beer to cool down. Once it arrives, he chugs it down and heaves a sigh of relief, only to find Uzaki chugging down her liquor and ordering several more. Out of concern, he tells her to tone it down and at least drink some water to avoid getting too drunk, but Uzaki refuses and continues ordering more. Later that night, on their way home, Uzaki gets so drunk that she starts acting like a deranged lunatic, mistaking Sakurai for a pole and forcefully latching her chest to him. Pissed, Sakurai tries to get her off his body and send her home. However, when he checks the time and realizes it's already too late, he decides to call a cab, only to realize that he's out of money. Shocked, he considers withdrawing from the cash machine, but then the late-night fees hit him, and he finally decides to let the annoying brat spend the night at his house. Moments later, when they arrive at Sakurai's house, Uzaki boots up a game and asks Sakurai to play with her, but he ignores her and tries to go to sleep. Eventually, she opens a can of beer and continues drinking, constantly ignoring Sakurai's warnings to stop. Moments later, while gaming, Uzaki calls Sakurai to look at her, but when he ignores her, she tries to kiss him to confirm if he's truly asleep. At the last minute, Sakurai jerks awake and merges himself with the wall, scared out of his mind, but Uzaki trolls him a little bit more before finally falling asleep on the floor. The next morning, Uzaki gets the worst hangover of her life as she throws up in the toilet and tears up. Sakurai has a field day enjoying his "I told you so" moment and, while packing up all the trash, begins lecturing her on drinking with limits and whatnot. Once she's done, Uzaki tries to take a nap, desperately trying to endure the pain from her stomachache, and promising never to drink again. As Sakurai is about to leave for the convenience store, she thanks him for being with her at the pub, claiming it was fun, and throws up right there on the futon. A few days later, Uzaki meets Sakurai on the street and apologizes for getting drunk and acting like a fool during her birthday celebration. Flustered, Sakurai tells her not to worry because he knows it was the alcohol talking. Even so, Uzaki presents him with an envelope containing money to pay him back and tries to get him to accept it. At that point, Sakurai notices 3 women nearby, judging him because they assume he took advantage of her that night, so he does his best to refuse the money. However, when Uzaki continues saying things that sound even more compromising, Sakurai reluctantly takes the envelope, only to hear the women call him scum, causing him to break down. Shortly after, when Sakurai returns to work, Ame and her dad prepare a small table with a bowl of rice and ask him how Uzaki's birthday turned out, hoping to hear some good but funny news. However, when Sakurai sighs, they realize they've misread the situation, so they put away the gimmicks and listen attentively. Sakurai then tells them everything that happened that night, including how they drank too much and she had to spend the night at his place. However, just as he's about to tell them what Uzaki did to his futon, tears roll down his face, and he starts crying, leaving Ame in shock. Eventually, Sakurai stops and tells them everything else except the vomiting part, and Ame asks if he's ever truly had a bad time with Uzaki before. Hearing this, Sakurai recalls all the annoying things Uzaki has done and said to him in the past, and immediately starts freaking out in confusion. After regaining his composure, he tells them that although he's glad the annoying midget is finally quiet, he still feels an awkwardness between them whenever he tries to talk to her. That said, he begins pacing as he ponders the odd changes in Uzaki's behavior. Once he's done, Akihiko and Ami give him a complimentary voucher for the upcoming fireworks festival and tell him to invite Uzaki. But Sakurai refuses because he finds it cheesy. At this, Ami gets so worked up that she activates mom mode and orders Sakurai to shower Uzaki with a boatload of compliments when he eventually takes her to the fireworks festival, leaving the poor guy in shock. A few nights later, while Ozaki waits quietly in her beautiful yukata, Sakurai comes running over and apologizes for being late. For some reason, Ozaki politely thanks him for inviting her on the outing, but Sakurai, who's just trying to survive the painfully awkward moment, reassures her that it's no big deal. Soon after, the duo visits several food stalls to enjoy various delicacies, then plays at the shooting gallery and eats some shaved ice. After all that, Uzaki politely thanks Sakurai again, which scares him a bit because he knows the old, normal Uzaki is much more fun. Seeing her depressed face, Bro ransacks his faulty brain cells, trying to figure out how to lift her spirits. Just then, he recalls Ame's harsh lecture earlier and begins showering Uzaki with a sea of compliments. Initially, nothing really works, as Uzaki keeps brushing them off, but as Sakurai continues complimenting every little thing about her, she eventually comes around and returns to her normal, yappy, and annoying self. Some of her snide remarks immediately get to Sakurai, but he sucks it all up to avoid making her sad again. At one point, he even calls Uzaki a cute little 4-foot honey bun and causes the poor girl's head to almost melt off in embarrassment. When she eventually gets sick of all the compliments, she playfully wrestles Sakurai to make him shut up. As Sakurai tries to calm her down, Uzaki's bag swings into his head and knocks his brain off course, immediately knocking him out cold. In that split second, Sakurai's life flashes before his eyes as he begins recalling a certain evening at his former school, when he found Uzaki practicing alone in the school's pool and scolded her. Back then, Uzaki was very shy, calm, and respectful, so she immediately began apologizing while also condemning herself for being a bad swimmer. After hearing her out, Sakurai leaves her standing there, making her feel dejected, so she decides to try again. Halfway through her swim, she spots Sakurai gliding gracefully through the water like a dolphin on steroids and studies his movements in admiration. Just then, Sakurai swims over to her and gives her a few tips on how to swim better, prompting her to keep trying. Later that night, the duo walks home together, and Uzaki continues to condemn her swimming skills again as they approach the fireworks festival. To cheer her up, Sakurai runs off, returns with 2 ears of corn, and hands one to Uzaki. While they eat, he tells her to keep practicing because he's sure she'll become a good swimmer soon, immediately lifting her spirits. Just then, the fireworks begin, causing Uzaki to drag Sakurai further into the venue to get a better look at them. At that point, Sakurai wakes up to find himself staring at Uzaki's bandankers and realizes his head is on her lap. Shocked, he asks Uzaki if he passed out, and she tells him that he did not too long ago. He then tries getting up, but Ozaki warns him not to yet, so he doesn't collapse again and begins apologizing non-stop for hitting him in the head. After begging her not to sweat it, Sakurai stares at the tissue mass before him, recalls the faces she made years ago and now, and thinks about his next choice of words. Afterward, he tells Uzaki that on the day she joined their college last year, he never really thought much about her being in his life. However, when she started befriending, teasing, and tagging along everywhere he went, even infringing on his personal space sometimes, he slowly realized what he's been missing out on. Until last year, he's been a total loner his entire life. However, now that Uzaki's brought him into the light, he thanks her dearly for making having fun actually enjoyable for him, and asks her to stop being sad, leaving Uzaki really flustered. Following this, he softly asks Uzaki to go out with him again before summer break ends, and Uzaki happily tells him she'll follow him anywhere. Just then, the fireworks come on, and the duo gets to enjoy the sight together. The next day, while Sakurai and Uzaki stroll to her house, Uzaki tells Sakurai he doesn't have to return the money she overpaid him for his futon to her mom, but Sakurai insists that he does. Just then, she notices he's much quieter than usual, and asks if he's feeling nervous because it's his first time visiting a girl's house. Sakurai immediately freezes because he knows it's true, but when Uzaki urges him to calm down by saying they have cats he can pet, he smiles so happily that Uzaki gets pissed. Moments later, when they arrive at Uzaki's house, Uzaki's mom Suki meets them at the foyer and tries to introduce herself to Sakurai, but his death stare and towering, intimidating aura sends chills down her spine, causing her to mistake him for an abuser. Just then, Sakurai respectfully bows his head and greets her, which confuses her, but when he gives her the death stare yet again, she shrivels in fear. Before long, Suki lets Sakurai into the house, but for some reason, she sits as far away from him and Uzaki as possible and talks to them from there. At one point, she calls Uzaki over and pulls her cheeks while scolding her for hanging out with and spending the night at a boy's house. Uzaki then tries to defend herself by claiming that Sakurai is a good guy, but Suki tells her off and apologizes to Sakurai for any trouble Uzaki might have caused him. Sakurai tells Suki to keep scolding Ozaki, but Ozaki storms over and crashes out at him for making it seem like she's been a nuisance despite looking after him. All the while, Suki senses the chemistry between them and starts making comments about their relationship as a cat quietly rests on her lap. As she continues yapping, Suki suddenly notices Sakurai staring and smiling at her chest and fears that bro is a gigolo who wants to crack her ancient vanilla buns. In reality, however, Sakurai is only staring at the cat because he loves cats. But the misunderstanding gets even worse when Uzaki asks whether he'll pet the thing they're both staring at once. It's done being shy around strangers. Eventually, Sakurai gets up, apologizes to Suki for the intrusion, and leaves the house with Uzaki to continue gaming. A few days later, Suki visits Akihiko's cafe to see Uzaki at work, and Uzaki serves her coffee before continuing to other customers. Suki is happy to see this. However, when Sakurai appears in her field of vision, she is startled and quickly turns back toward the counter, where she finds Akihiko and Ame welcoming her to the cafe and praising Uzaki for doing a great job keeping the customers entertained. To prove it, they point to Uzaki playing with their customers' little boy and girl and continue praising Suki for raising her so well. While Suki appreciates their compliments, Ame suddenly switches gears and introduces the other person keeping the customers entertained, Sakurai. She describes him as a fierce, closet hunk who's tall, slim, fit, and respectful, exactly the kind of guy older women like. Hearing this, Suki gets really flustered and nervously asks Akihiko and Ame if Sakurai is actually into cougars like her. Despite being shocked by the question, the duo reassures her that Sakurai isn't a cougar hunter and is just doing his job, finally putting her mind at ease. Unfortunately, just as she's about to leave, Suki overhears Sakurai and her daughter having a lewd conversation in the storeroom while sorting coffee beans, and cringes when the duo starts talking about mature adults and preserving their richness while keeping them excited. Moments later, Sakurai and Uzaki play a multiplayer game together, and Uzaki defeats him flawlessly. She then pauses the game and trolls the poor guy to death for being a total potato until Sakurai decides to grab a drink from the fridge. Since he lost, Uzaki tells him to grab one for her as well, but while doing so, he compares her to her mom, saying she's much quieter and kinder, which immediately ticks Uzaki off. Over the next few days, Uzaki stalks her mom everywhere, even while she showers, to learn her calm and collected mannerisms. After doing this for a week, she returns to work and starts acting way too calm and collected for the customers and even Ami to bear. Curious, Ami asks Sakurai, while flicking ice water on him, if he said something to piss her off, and Sakurai confesses everything. As they scold him, Uzaki approaches them and starts acting like she's Saint Mary all of a sudden. Pissed, Sakurai begs her to quit being annoying, but when she refuses, he loses his cool and starts screaming. At this, Uzaki promises to stop being like that if he does the right thing. Left with no other choice, Sakurai bows his head and apologizes for what he said earlier. However, just as Uzaki celebrates her overwhelming victory, Sakurai suddenly tells her that he prefers the usual Uzaki, and this makes Uzaki blush so badly that she calls him out immediately and starts another argument with him. A few minutes into their argument, a boy suddenly screams at them to stop fighting, but Ami gently tells him they're just having a lover's quarrel. At this, the boy gives the duo a lottery ticket to make up, and Sakurai and Uzaki stroll to the lottery station immediately after work. Getting there, they play the lotto card, and to their surprise, they win a 2-night, 1-day trip for two to Tottori. A few days later, when they touch down at Tottori at airport, Sakurai asks Uzaki if she's comfortable coming with him on the trip, and she assures him that she's cool with it, totally unaware that two creeps are watching them. Once they get outside the lobby, they spot a weirdo in a suit singing songs about Starbucks and 7-Eleven as he happily walks past them. After he's gone, Sakurai suggests they visit the famous dunes and go sandboarding, but Uzaki trolls him for choosing loner activities again. Just then, an orange taxi pulls up, and they find Sakaki and Ame in the driver's and passenger seats before climbing in. On their way to their first sighting, Uzaki asks how the two of them ended up there. Ami says Akihiko gave her a summer break, while Sakaki says he just randomly got dragged into the trip too. Hearing this, Sakurai and Uzaki commend Sakaki for being so thoughtful, completely unaware that the two are actually there for a more sinister reason, which is to see the trip through to the end and make sure Sakurai and Uzaki fall in love with each other. Moments later, the four of them arrive at the Tottori Dunes, but while their tour guide shows them around and walks them to the top of a dune, Uzaki suddenly challenges Sakurai to a race to the ocean. Whoever loses buys the winner a treat. Sakurai accepts the challenge immediately, but as it begins, Uzaki suddenly pops up behind him, riding a sandboard. Pissed, Sakurai accuses her of cheating, but Uzaki doesn't, as she trash-talks him for being too slow. Before long, Karma catches up to her, as she runs out of sloppy ground to glide on. After her sandboard stops, Uzaki desperately tries to run to the finish line, but Sakurai breezes past her like the Flash and ends up winning the entire challenge. Uzaki then tries to accuse him of cheating, while breathing heavily, but Sakurai trash-talks her and basks in his victory. Just then, a random couple approaches Sakurai and asks him to help take their pictures. After doing so, Sakurai asks Uzaki to follow him back up, but when she says she can't walk, he drags her across the sand. Shortly after, their tour guide shows them Japan's oldest circular school building, now renovated as a museum, and takes them inside to see all the various beautiful figurines and manga pages on display. While exploring the convenience store, Uzaki picks up 4 toy boxes and asks Sakurai to pay. But as he crashes out, he spots that random couple from the dunes posing the love sign and gets confused. Soon after, the tour guide takes them to a statue she calls the White Hair of Inaba, situated near a shrine. As she explains the history behind it, an annoying Uzaki runs off to a stall, returns with 2 rabbit cakes and the shop clerk, and asks Sakurai to pay for it. After doing so, she inhales one of the cakes like a fat cow and gives Sakurai the other one. However, just as Sakurai is about to eat, Uzaki interrupts him and bites off half of his food. At that point, Sakurai realizes that if he eats the rest of it, it would count as another indirect kiss, so he hesitates. Seizing the opportunity, Uzaki finishes the remaining half, only to spot that random couple nearby, sharing a rabbit cake, and cringes when she realizes she and Sakurai just shared an indirect kiss. A few minutes later, Sakurai and Uzaki visit the shrine and say their prayers. After that, they pick out love fortune cards and read them out to each other. While Sakurai gets middling luck, Uzaki gets great luck and wins the competition again. She then reads out the personality of her estranged lover, and immediately freezes in embarrassment when she realizes the card describes Sakurai. Shocked and confused, Sakurai reads his card, takes a look around the shrine, and looks it up online to confirm his suspicions. Just then, Ami and Sakaki show up, emitting their innate Diddy auras, and reveal to the unsuspecting bozos that the shrine is built on the match that the famous white hair made between 2 lovers to create Japan's first love story, which means Tottori in itself is a lover's paradise. a place where lovers show up to bond. Having said that, Sakaki playfully recreates corny scenes of Sakurai and Uzaki acting like estranged lovers, but Sakurai angrily tells him to stop. When he refuses, an embarrassed Uzaki asks Sakaki why he's so obsessed with love, but Sakaki only teases her more. Moments later, their tour guide takes them to a cable lift system and shows them the highest mountain in their region. When a lover's cable lift pops up, Sakaki teases Sakurai and Uzaki again. Embarrassed, Uzaki asks Sakaki and Sakurai to ride that lift together, but eventually, only for both of them to end up riding it anyway. On the way, Sakurai thinks back to every cute Uzaki face he's seen so far, crashes out, and tells Uzaki to forget the awkward remarks and prove to everyone that they're just there to enjoy themselves. A few hours later, they all arrive at their inn, but rather than sharing a room, Uzaki decides to stay with Ami. While unpacking, Ami asks Uzaki if she's fine not sharing a room with Sakurai, and Uzaki assures her that she is. Meanwhile, Sakaki tries to teach Sakurai game, but when he refuses to learn, he pins Sakurai to the wall and starts saying weird stuff. Just then, Uzaki barges into the room and immediately gets the wrong idea. By evening, the tour guide makes all four of them participate in a steam bath, claiming it'll cure all their ails from the inside out. A few minutes into the torturous bath, Uzaki starts sweating buckets, so she comes off her chair and asks Sakurai, who's right beside her, for his towel. While he refuses, she trips on him, and while massaging his abs with her knockers, starts saying lewd things that make their tour guide barge into the room and scold them. Moments later, while the boys and girls bask in the inn's hot spring, Sakurai and Ozaki continue their banter even with the barriers separating them and ultimately decide to compete to see who's the better person. Later that night, Sakurai picks up a gun piñata show to prove he's better, but Ozaki distracts him at the last second and makes him miss his shot. Following that, they move on to play pinball, but somehow, Uzaki plays dirty again. The next morning, Sakurai and Uzaki take a stroll around town to check out the famous statues, while Ami and Sakaki follow behind. At one point, they find a matchmaking frog statue and become very embarrassed. Afterward, they check out some yokai statues with their tour guide and spend the rest of their day discovering and naming infamous yokai in Japanese history. A few days after returning home, Uzaki calls Sakurai, asking if she can come over, and Sakurai agrees. After hanging up, he looks at the junk Uzaki left behind during her previous visit and picks up a few of them. As he's wondering what to do with them, he hears a loud knock at the door and opens it, only to find Uzaki standing there, holding a giant beanbag plush. Despite being pissed at her, Sakurai lets Uzaki inside, tells her to take home all the junk she left behind during her previous visit, and asks why she brought the beanbag with her. In her defense, Uzaki says it's to help prevent butt cramps whenever they play games for hours on his hardwood floor, leaving Sakurai even more pissed. Uzaki then continues guilt-tripping him for inconveniencing her until Sakurai finally allows her to keep the beanbag there. However, before they begin chilling, Sakurai opens a trash bag and tells Uzaki to throw all the useless stuff she left behind into it. Left with no other choice, Uzaki picks up everything on the floor and tells Sakurai she doesn't need any of it. Hearing this, Sakurai loses it and asks what a lizard head toy breathing mask is doing on the floor. Uzaki then puts it on to show him how to wear it and have fun with it. Unfazed, Sakurai tosses it into the trash and continues cleaning until they finally clear the room. With all the trash gone, Sakurai lectures Uzaki to death. So to avoid actually dying of boredom, she walks over to his fridge and opens it to grab a drink. While she's there, Sakurai notices a plastic bag inside and asks what's in it, expecting it to contain more trash. He grabs the bag, finds the fresh ingredients she bought earlier for lunch, and recoils in shock after realizing he misjudged her. He then tries to apologize for jumping to conclusions, but Uzaki ignores the apology and asks him if he'd like meat or fish. Moments later, while eating their warm lunch, Sakurai apologizes again for what he did earlier, and Uzaki brushes it off. The next day at work, Akihiko and Ami ask Sakurai if he'll help them with food prep. At first, Sakurai isn't sure whether to agree, but when Uzaki starts teasing him again, claiming it's not an easy feat, Sakurai agrees to do it just to prove to Ozaki that he can cook, only to serve burned spaghetti Napolitan 30 minutes later. While Ame and Akihiko stare at it in shock, a disappointed Sakurai lets Uzaki laugh at him for a few seconds, then he clamps her cheeks shut. Later that day, Sakurai, Uzaki, and Suki are at the Uzaki residence, sussily massaging and kneading 3 big lumps of udon dough, when Suki suddenly expresses her surprise at Sakurai for actually coming over to her place for cooking lessons. Sakurai then apologizes for any intrusion, thanks her for the help, and Suki promises to keep helping him out. As Sakurai continues working the dough, she praises his strength, but Uzaki teases him yet again. After scolding her, Suki gets a bit surprised that she's having a normal conversation with Sakurai, and realizes it must be because his deadly eyes are focused on the udon, not her. Flustered, she cheers Sakurai on, and once they're done, she has them cover it and heads out. Shortly afterward, Sakurai and Uzaki spot their two cats in the distance, and consider petting them. Meanwhile, Suki is busy in her room, folding clothes and complimenting Sakurai's respectful behavior. She then walks down the stairs to check on the youngsters in the kitchen. However, as she approaches the entrance, she overhears Sakurai and Uzaki saying some lewd, stupid stuff again and spirals in fear, as she suspects Uzaki is trying to pimp her out to her gigolo friend. Eventually, she heads into the kitchen to cook the udon, and the three of them enjoy the meal together. Soon after, Sakurai takes Ozaki to a rock climbing gym as a thank you for helping him with his cooking lessons. After some small talk, the instructor teaches them how to complete an official climb on the walls and lets them give it a try. While Sakurai performs well thanks to his build, the midget struggles to pull herself to the top. Once they're done with the first climb, Sakurai thanks the instructor, while Uzaki pants like Larry Wheels after a 100-meter dash. She complains to Sakurai about her aching muscles, but when he tells her he's only just starting to enjoy himself, even throwing in a bit of trash talk, she loses her cool and starts trying to piss him off. Seizing the opportunity, Sakurai fans the flames, and Ozaki crashes out so badly that the instructor tells them to settle the beef on a more difficult climb. This time, Sakurai goes first and struggles halfway up after losing his foothold. However, thanks to Ozaki and the instructor directing him to the right places to put his feet, he completes the climb, gets back down, and pisses Uzaki off even more by calling her a fat cow when she tries to tease him. Since it's now her turn, Uzaki tries the climb, only to shamefully give up after climbing 10 steps. Embarrassed, she considers staying there for the rest of life, but when the instructor brings her down, she shamelessly admits defeat for the first time and urges Sakurai to continue climbing while she watches. When Sakurai eventually starts the climb, Uzaki takes her seat and watches him in admiration. Later that night, while Sakurai is all alone in a karaoke bar, about to sing, he spots Uzaki and Ami spying on him and stops immediately. Moments later, the duo laugh maniacally at him for pulling this stunt and apologize for earlier, but Sakurai ignores them and sulks in a corner. When he gets fed up, he calls the receptionist and rents out 2 more karaoke bars to keep these pests away. Before long, Ame whispers something in Uzaki's ear, and the duo leaves abruptly, only to return seconds later in off-brand Chun-Li costumes. While Sakurai recoils in shock, both girls sandwich the poor guy with their luscious cushions and apologize one more time for barging into his solo session. However, since Sakurai's brain is currently in airplane mode, thanks to the softness around him, he spaces out. Seeing this, the duo leaves again, but this time, Ami returns wearing a cosplay policewoman's outfit, while Uzaki wears a very revealing bunny costume. Ame asks Sakurai if his mood has improved yet. To avoid getting pinched again, he tells them they can chill out and enjoy karaoke now, and the girls immediately get on with it. While drinking, Ami suddenly asks Sakurai what his favorite costume is, and Sakurai accidentally says the bunny one, leaving Uzaki utterly embarrassed and him dejected. The next day, Uzaki visits Sakurai while it rains and suddenly tells him, with tears rolling down her cheek, that she can't hang out with him anymore. Shocked, Sakurai tells her to explain what happened calmly. At first, Uzaki says she doesn't want to be a bother. However, when Sakurai promises to do whatever it takes to help her, the midget smirks and briskly tells Sakurai that she just realized that she has not done the report she had for homework over the summer break. She then continues to complain about having college homework at her age and even crashes out at her mom and brother, but Sakurai, tired of her gimmicks, slams the door on her and leaves her begging for his help. The next day at work, while Sakurai is in the storeroom, complaining to Akihiko about Uzaki's irritating attitude, Akihiko tries picking up a heavy box and breaks his back in the process. After screaming his guts out, Sakurai drags Akihiko back to the counter, and Akihiko instructs Ami to close the store for the day so that Sakurai can drive him to the chiropractor. After they leave, Ami serves Uzaki coffee on the house, larps a little about inheriting the coffee shop, and asks Uzaki to share her history with Sakurai at their former school. Hearing this, Uzaki thinks back to the first time she met Sakurai and tells Ami that on that day, her friend dragged her into joining the swimming club as a manager because she was too shy to join on her own. After a formal introduction to the boys, Uzaki says the head of the swimming club left them in the hands of the third-year manager for beginner training. However, before the manager began the lesson, Sakurai showed up to talk to him, and when Uzaki saw him for the first time, she recoiled in fear because of his infamous death stare. After he left, Uzaki told Ami that she was visibly shivering, but Ami says she's never been intimidated by Sakurai's eyes before. Uzaki then continues, adding that over time she learned how hardworking, helpful, and cheerful he is as a person, and realized that the guy's just awkward and prone to misunderstandings, so she became friendlier with him. At this, Ami tells Uzaki she's now copying his talking style, and Uzaki, shocked, asks what she means. Ami says she's noticed that Uzaki's no longer speaking slang with her, but upon hearing this, Uzaki's face turns bright red with embarrassment, and she runs away to avoid dying from cringe. A few days later, while at work, Ozaki asks Akihiko, Sakaki, and Ami to tell her what Sakurai is like when he's drunk, since she's never actually seen him like that, and Ami tells her that they also don't know because Sakurai is very good at holding his liquor. Hearing this, Sakaki assures them that Sakurai gets drunk on rare occasions, and Uzaki immediately asks what he was like. Curious, Sakaki asks why she wants to know, and she says it's because she hates that he's seen her booze-related screw-ups. That said, Uzaki begs him to tell her how to make Sakurai drop his guard so she can get him drunk, and Sakaki agrees. Later that night, Ozaki visits Sakurai and offers to cook for him so they can go all out. While Sakurai's back is turned, Uzaki recalls Sakaki telling her that Sakurai naturally lowers his guard in his apartment, so she ends up cooking a large, spicy dinner for him and pours him several drinks, without him even suspecting, to cool off. After that, she shows him 5 shark flick movies she rented earlier and coerces him into watching one of them with her. While they do so, she pretends to down her drink so that Sakurai can try to match her until she finally gets him drunk. At this point, Uzaki remembers Sakaki telling her and Ami that Sakurai's mental defenses are usually down whenever he's drunk, which means he can't lie. Because of this, she smugly asks him a series of test questions while poking his face and confirms that Sakaki was right. Unfortunately for her, before she gets Sakurai to incriminate himself, Sakurai thanks her for cooking for him, making her feel flustered, and nonchalantly blurts out the word love. Hearing this, Uzaki's expression changes, and she begins gulping down several cans of beer until she gets drunk. Later that night, when Sakaki arrives at Sakurai's apartment to check on things, he finds Uzaki and Sakurai sleeping on the floor, so he wakes Sakurai first, helps him into the futon, then wakes Uzaki and does the same before leaving. The next morning, Sakurai and Uzaki wake up to see that they slept in the same bed the entire night, and things immediately get awkward. Later that day, at work, the duo meets up with Akihiko and Aki and explains everything that happened in shame. Apparently, Akihiko had already given them the day off, expecting this to happen, but now that they're there, he and Ami urge them to try remembering things in order. Uzaki goes first, saying she remembers making dinner, and Sakurai follows up by saying they ate, drank, and watched movies before it all goes black. Moving on, Uzaki accidentally blurts out that they slept on the same futon, shocking Akihiko so much that he immediately closes his shop and bribes Uzaki and Sakurai with cheesecake so they can explain what happened under the sheets in detail. After an awkward silence, Sakurai says he woke up to find Uzaki beside him, but as Akihiko and Ami recoil in shock, he swears on his mama that they didn't do anything. While doing some weird dance, Ami and her dad taunt him, and Sakurai begs Uzaki to tell them what happened since she was up longer than him. Uzaki rubs her temple to recall the last thing that happened before she blacked out, and the moment she does, she starts grinning. Pissed, Sakurai immediately calls her out for grinning and tries to get her to admit she doesn't remember anything. But deep down, poor Ame suspects something happened and has a mini freakout for not being with them. She then begs them to let her tag along next time, but as Uzaki starts making plans to come over to Sakurai's house again, Sakurai reminds her that the new session's classes start the next day. At this, Uzaki immediately gets sad, as she realizes that summer break is over and Sakurai scolds her for being so dumb. The following morning, Uzaki wakes up and freshens up for school. During breakfast, her younger brother, Kiri, crashes out at her for being a letdown, but Suki serves her some strong coffee and advises her to perk up a little. On her way to school, Uzaki spots Sakurai up ahead and runs up to him to greet him. After the niceties, Uzaki says she's still not over the end of summer shock because they didn't hang out nearly enough, and Sakurai tells her not to be stupid, leaving her in shock. After getting scolded, Sakurai tells her to stop yapping because they can hang out whenever since they'll always be together, and this gets Uzaki very embarrassed. At first, Sakurai doesn't realize what he just said, but the moment he does, he also gets embarrassed and starts explaining, until Uzaki trolls him again. That's the end of today's video. If you stayed until now, comment down below Lonely Virgin. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see hot recaps like this. Don't forget to check out the next video.